Morning, and welcome to Daily Cyber Briefing for Friday, the 30th of August. Hasn't August gone quickly? I'm Stephen Ridgway, by the way. Right, Cisco has addressed a high-severity flaw in the Nexus OS, NXOS software. It is a high-severity flaw in DHCP version 6 relay, or the agent that does that. So if you are using Nexus switches, specifically the Nexus 3000 and 7000 series switches, or the 9000 series switches operating in standalone NXOS mode, you may be vulnerable to this particular to an exploit of this particular vulnerability. So the vulnerability is tracked as CVE 2024-20446 and is due to improper handling of fields in a DHCP v6 relay reply message. So if you can't remember quite what all those things are, have a quick Google for DHCP 101, and you'll see how that fits into the DHCP. I'm going to say protocol. It isn't really so much the protocol, it's just the way DHCP functions. Have a look at this. There's a link out to the software. Sorry, not the software, the Cisco advisories. You can tell it's a Friday morning, can't you? So the Cisco advisories, there are patches available for this. So if you are using Nexus switches, strongly recommend that you apply those patches. Also, with full understanding that it's a Nexus switch, so it's not just sitting around in some unimportant part of your network. If you've got one of these, it's probably doing something very important, very deep in the middle of your network somewhere, and therefore read up around the vulnerabilities, and if you can put mitigating controls in place prior to being able to get the patches applied. I haven't actually had a chance to check this morning to see whether these patches will require a restart of the switch. If it does, for some organizations, that's very tricky. Hopefully, if you're in that situation, you've got resilient switches and you've already worked out a process by which you can take a switch offline, apply the patch, bring it back up, test it, route the traffic through it, and then do the other one, so on and so forth. But yeah, so appreciate that vulnerabilities on network devices that sit at this sort of level in your network can be challenging to patch. However, been there, done that, been responsible for large networks in the past, so I know it can be done. There is some indications, there are some indications that an zero-day vulnerability in obsolete but common surveillance cameras are being exploited to install Mirai. Vulnerability is apparently easy to exploit and allows the attackers to remotely execute commands. Commands. Good Lord. Right. Anybody would think I was a professional. The devices are AM1203 cameras from the Taiwan manufacturer Avtech. It is a 5-year-old vulnerability that's currently being tracked as CVE 2024-7029. The AVM 1203 isn't sold and isn't supported, so it is one of those bits of kit. We've spoken about this in the past. End of life means various things. One being, can you, if it not actually breaks, can you get the hardware replaced? But I think from a security perspective, as soon as the vendor or the manufacturer has stopped providing security patches and updates, you really shouldn't have devices on your network anywhere. And I know that you could argue, well, risk assess it all, and if there's some unimportant part of your network, leave vulnerable stuff in it because it's too much like hard work to. No, it isn't. No, there are certain things which the effort involved in doing the risk assessment and targeting the work is just probably isn't far off just replacing things and keeping them up to date. And it certainly reduces the unknown bits of risks, such as you may well think that this thing is unimportant and you just kind of left it in a forgotten bit of your network. The attackers, though, may well be able to use it to hop onto other things, that sort of stuff. So you shouldn't really have any of these devices still kicking around. However, they're cameras. I bet you they've been forgotten in lots and lots of places. And I bet if you did a showdown search for this stuff, there's a load of them that will be connected to the internet. So what can you do about it? Well, other than replace them or put in place other mitigating controls, such as make sure that they are not available to receive connections from anywhere other than secured parts of your network. I mean, it's a camera, right? So you've got to think about, should it really be network accessible at all, in the sense of general network, or even worse, sort of accessible over the internet? You really need to think about this sort of stuff. Part of secure architectural design is to minimize the threat landscape. And obviously, when these things were put in, well, one says obviously, but I think one would hope that when these devices, these cameras were put in, A, the vulnerability wasn't known about, and B, there had been some thought put into how to protect these devices. Well, if they're not vulnerable, then there may have been an argument that, well, we'll just slap them in the easiest way, make it all work, and then we'll be okay. Yeah, that's all well and good, so long as all the rest of it works, like your patch management on them and your replacing unsupportable hardware and so on and so forth. So you can't do very much about this. The article in Ars Technica is very good. It demonstrates the way in which the vulnerability can be exploited. It's basically a vulnerability in the brightness function, which is available via a URL on the device, and manipulates vulnerability in factory.cgi. So basically, you send it a command. You send a command to the LED brightness control, basically saying change directory to temp, wget a particular file from a particular IP address, chmod that to be executable, run it. It then, I would assume, unpacks something and then remove it. So pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward to run. So nice thing is with this, there are then some indicators of compromise or indicators of attack that you can put into your network monitoring equipment if you have got these cameras out there and you can't do much from an architecture perspective to protect them. At the very least, you should be trying to get some network logs from around these. Again, network logs, it is not as hard as people think it is to get network logs from things. And it is, quite frankly, one of those, well, yeah, all right, it might be a marginal pain in the ass to get it set up. Once it's set up, it is absolutely fundamental. And we've said it again, one of the fundamentals that we talk to people about as often as we get people to listen to us is that in order to have a good understanding of the security posture of your environment at any one time, you need information from security logs, be that SaaS logs, server logs, endpoint logs, whatever it might be. You need to understand what is actually happening on your endpoints, i.e. you need sort of process and so on information from your endpoints, and that can come from EDR or endpoint intrusion detection solutions, those sorts of visibility solutions on the endpoints. And you also need to be understanding what is flying around your network. As an absolute bare minimum, you need to think about north-south traffic. That's what's coming into your environment. It doesn't matter whether this is cloud or on-prem, right? Stuff comes into it, stuff goes out of it. So you need to really understand that. But there is a very strong argument for capturing east-west traffic as well. And yes, it does generate a lot of storage. Storage is, frankly, a lot cheaper than the costs of recovering from a ransomware attack. So anyway, there are some indicators of attack indicators of compromise in this article. Would strongly recommend that you have a look at those. Potentially, as there appears to be a hard-coded IP address in this attack, seriously consider blocking access, if you can, blocking access to these cameras from that IP address. Or alternatively, at least get some high-severity alerting when you are seeing the attack being thrown at these cameras, because they are vulnerable, they will be compromised, and they will end up part of a Mirai botnet unless you do something about it. And then finally from me, I finish off the week with North Korean hackers. They're targeting developers with malicious NPM packages. Not a new concept. However, there are times when particular groups are more active in this space than others. There has been a noticeable uplift in activity from North Korean groups from the middle of August up till a day or two ago. Watch out for NPM packages, temp Etherscan API, Telegram -con, Helbit Validate, which I have absolutely no idea what it does, and QQ Console. If you are downloading those and installing them from NPM, excuse me, NPM, ensure that they actually are the packages that you're really looking for, because there are malicious versions that are being pushed out via NPM. So one thing to point out is, and in this article there is at least one indicator of compromise. So you may want to have a look to make sure that there's an IP address which is associated with this. You may want to look at getting some extended monitoring around connections being made out to that, or you, including DNS requests as well, because there's a domain name associated with this stuff too. So have a look at that. Just as always, be cautious when you're using package repositories of any kind. Those repositories are such a good target for attackers. If they can get stuff in there, they can end up, especially if they're not particularly bothered about how focused the attacks are, they can then distribute stuff without having to go to really very much trouble at all. Just wait for your dev team to install the malware for you, kind of thing. Which, that's not fair on in some ways that's not fair on devs, because then they're doing an enormously hard job trying to keep on top of that. You know, secure development is not hard, and it is done well in many organizations. Not always done well. Anyway, that's enough from me for today. Enough from me for this week. I hope you all have a really good weekend, and I'll speak to you again on Monday morning.